yesterday, the Community Engagement Committee of the school board met with some of those who had spoken at last Tuesday's board meeting, and they're concerned about the OCR report, and in particular the community focus team, and sort of the requesting sort of a reset on that team. About a year ago, we had groups of people who were working. Dr. Lewis was sort of leading that effort, and there were many meetings. There were some great discussions, but there was some concern that the movement forward, the change that people wanted to see, really wasn't happening. The concerns especially, I think, were around three different areas. One was, how is the community focus team working, how it worked in the past, what changes need to happen in the future. There was concern about a lack of transparency, about sort of not having a particular focus, how people were not engaged maybe as much as they should have been. There were concerns about data, how much data, what kinds of data needed to be shared, how we knew if changes were really happening or not. There was a concern, another concern about the equity specialists whose hours had been reduced, and just very quickly, I want to address that. Our 3 equity specialists were hired originally with a contract that required them to have 260 days per year. That would mean they'd be working year-round with weekends off. That was it. So when their contract was reduced to less than that, I think it's important for people to understand their contracts are still more than full-time teacher contracts, but they're going to be working more now when kids are in school, when school is in session, rather than basically year-round, which is what 260 days a year does. It's important, I think, for the community to understand we have not reduced our commitment to these equity specialists. We're just trying to give them a more livable, a more doable contract. I thought, and Mrs. Seelinger was there, Mrs. Ike was there at the meeting we had on Monday with some of these folks. I thought it was a wonderful discussion. There were some suggestions about how we might move forward better, and I think our suggestion would be, and this is certainly open to discussion with the board, and as far as I'm concerned, with the community, is that we do need to reset how the community focus team moves forward. My suggestion would be that we get a group of people together as sort of a design team, that we decide that we will have perhaps the Community Engagement Committee on the school board, and that includes a couple of staff members, to co-facilitate with a community member or two who would be determined by the community to co-facilitate this group, that we would come up with a specific purpose or goal, that we would together design what our metric would be for moving forward. How are we going to look at data? What data do we need? The suggestion came from this group that we need anecdotal information as well as the data we get from our PBIS referrals. That tells us something, but it doesn't tell us everything. There's some issues we need to address there. So what kind of data is going to be useful as we move forward? And that one thing in particular that the community focus team could do would be to engage the rest of the community, have listening sessions, listen to students, listen to parents, see what their concerns are, see where our strengths are, and to really figure out what we can do working together to help all of our kids. Our discipline data, we know we need to work on that. Our achievement data, we know we need to work on that. And we absolutely know that we have to have community support and community work to make the positive changes that we know we can do. So I guess at this point, my suggestion is, and I think, and Amy and Deborah, those of you who are here, raise your hand, is that we want to sort of change the way the committee works by having school board leadership and community leadership, co-facilitated, and that one of the first things we need to do is really decide what we're about, what our goal is, and how we're going to measure that.
Ms. Seelinger.
So I really I want to acknowledge the work that has been done before with the equity team, community focus team, and those who participated and the leadership. I was not involved with that group over the last year. I really saw, tried to step back and see the big picture. I see a two-pronged scenario. I see that we have compliance issues with our OCR report, and we are making strides to meet those deadlines of reporting and the things that we've set out with by OCR that we have to do. There's also the larger issue of our equity work and initiatives in the district, some of which were being done before we got the OCR report, some which have continued and grown and changed and shaped. So to me, there's kind of that, it's not a separation, but it's two pieces at the same time. I really feel that just being at the last meeting and a small group conversation with Jean, we do really need to reset, if you will, define a charge statement, a purpose, a vision for this committee as we would with any committee. We need to even step back a bit further, I think, because we do have committees of the board. We are the Community Engagement Committee of the board. Whether the board wants to take ownership of this community focus team or not, I think that needs to be discussed by the full board. I think we are willing to do that as a committee of the board, but we need to make sure that that's the will of the full board. And then from there, decide where we're going. The design team idea is, other people I'm sure have used it in different places. We have used this at MDE in our ESSA work. It's a small group to kind of vet ideas, set agendas, get things moving forward, keep things on track, as opposed to a big meeting of 60, 50, 70 people trying to coalesce around a bunch of ideas. I see as the it's my personal thing, I guess maybe I shouldn't share it, but the four things that I see are decreasing discipline, meeting the conditions of our OCR reporting, the work on equity, and then working towards solutions of our discipline disparity. So that's kind of, as I step back after yesterday and hearing from folks, where I felt like perhaps would be a good place to move forward from. But I would be thrilled to hear from the rest of the board on their thoughts.
Mr. Smith?
Go ahead.
Mr. Barlow?
I apologize in advance for my just getting over the flu. So, that being said, I'm glad to hear that the board is playing a more active role, and I think really the role that the community who has elected us would expect us to do. And also, I'm glad to hear that we're not really backing away from the OCR report. I have heard it said that the OCR report did not find us in violation or did not have any findings of discrimination associated with our discipline disparities, and I think it's important to keep in mind always that the reason that was the case is that the district decided to settle in advance, and I think
that's not true.
Well, if you look at the report, what did he say?
That the district decided to settle in
Well,
advance.
I'll continue with my comments and would invite and challenge anyone to look at the report, and if we have the technology available to go to the report, we can actually see it. But this is part of the problem. We are in denial of many basic things that sends the wrong message to the community. Many in the community have read the report, have come to the same point of conclusion, and oftentimes are left wondering, why do we choose to view that differently? My hope is that we will no longer do that, and that we will simply embrace fully